Good afternoon. I'm Steve Mazzacane. This is the Steve Mazzacane podcast. We will be starting our podcast in just a few minutes. To those who are new to this process, we haven't been on in quite a while, but we record a podcast. It's about a half hour long. We'll discuss issues facing Brantford, Connecticut, where I'm from, the shoreline of Connecticut, and national issues. Um, we thank you for joining us. And if there's questions or comments, you're welcome to comment alongside the discussion, raise questions, and we will talk about those as well. We're going to wait just 1 second um, to let more people log on. This is our first one in a long time, so we're just going to get back into the swing of things today. Talk about a bunch of local issues and some national stuff too. The abortion ruling, which everybody's talking about, and there's no way around. But to the comment, Mary and Elizabeth, thank you. Glad to be back. A lot of people were asking. So to those who are from Brantford, or if you're not familiar, I'll give you a little bit of background. Last weekend we had the Brantford Festival, and I managed the fried dough booth at the festival, which is, by the way, a significantly larger undertaking than you would have possibly believe. It's basically a full-time job for a week or two. But it did well. I was glad to see so many people in town, and overwhelmingly people were coming up saying, "Where's the podcast? When are you coming back?" And so I was about to do it anyway, but it's hard. This is not something that's a moneymaker. It's not something that brings in huge revenue in any way, shape, or form. It does help some of our advertisers. Today's sponsor is Fired Up. If you're from Brantford, in the center of town, Fired Up is they make cups and pots, and you put logos on it, put painting on it, and they bake it for you. And it's really cool. It's a cool thing to do. Spend a day, take the kids to. They have a bunch of summer camps coming up. Take a look at those. We have those on Brantford 7. We can promote those again later in the week. But we have sponsors, so it helps a little bit for our sponsors, but it's not really something that makes money for me. So I have other things that I have to spend time on. So it was rough to always take 4 o'clock and come here and be live. That said, I will try to post something every day from Monday through Thursday at 4 o'clock. Won't always be live. We may record it earlier for a half hour and put it on there. So if there are always questions or comments or things you'd like me to talk about or topics you'd like me to research and then talk about on camera, feel free to send those to me at any time. Send me an email, send me a call, or give me a call or a text, and I'd be glad to look into that. So we're glad to be back, and glad that there was a push to get it back. It felt good to see so many people want to see this back again. From a local standpoint, it's a really busy time in Brantford. We had the Brantford Festival. We had the fireworks this last weekend. We have jazz back on the green. We have a lot of events going on. Town center, it's such a good feeling on a summer night to drive through the town center and see activity. It's a great place to be. We have a great green, a lot of really good things happening. And so one of the things, before we get to the abortion issue, I want to talk about what you may see in the center of town now if you go there, which are some fairly large, there's always flags in the center of town. There are holders along the light posts, and there are flags that vary. American flags, they could be POW flags, they could be, and now we're seeing pride flags. And they're not the older pride flags. They're a new, I guess, more inclusive pride flags. It keeps kind of changing. It used to be just the colors. Now there's some circle in it. Whatever it is, the pride flags are there. They've been there for a few years. Colin Sheehan, who before he worked for the town, went to the town about getting pride flags up there, and the town supported him. Tremendous first selectman supported him in doing that. And this town has been pretty forward, largely due to Colin pushing some things, but the town has been overly helpful. If I've talked to Colin, he said the first selectman, who happens to be a Republican, by the way, has been overly supportive when we've had rallies. We had a fairly large rally on the green. I'm sorry about this. I'm forgetting the name of the nightclub in Florida that was attacked. Somebody went in and shot a gay nightclub in Florida. I forgot the name of it now. We had a rally for them. We've had these pride flags up. It's kind of a thing in Brantford. We do it. It's not overwhelming. It's not every pole has a flag, but there's significant support. Our town hall and the Blackstone Library had been lit up in pride colors in support of it. And so that's a good thing. I don't think that's bad in any way, shape, or form. I think inclusion of everybody is good, and everybody should get a chance to celebrate or support whatever it is they want to support within reason. But certainly pride is one thing we want to push and support. That said, racism exists, and sexism exists, and anti-Semitism exists, and all these things exist. No one can argue that. I guess they can, but it's nonsense. But yelling an accusation of racism is a serious thing. Yelling an accusation that somebody's being homophobic is a serious thing. It borders on slander unless there's overwhelming support for it. And when people have an issue and they have something that's passionate and they care about, they do have to be careful about calling somebody something or describing somebody a certain way or painting a certain light that they were treated in an anti-gay or a racist way when it really had nothing to do with that. And so we had this situation come up over the last couple of days with these pride flags. And so it's a really good example of how dangerous accusations are, and then how irresponsible people can be, and then what can happen on social media. The flags went up last week. I happened to be at the Parks and Rec Center when Colin was getting the flags ready to put up. And he put them up with someone else. And they went out and they removed some flags that were in place and put the pride flags in place of those. Okay. Soon after, Brantford has something called a position called the keeper of the flags. And that person, I guess, makes sure that certain flags are up at all times. And between Memorial Day and July 4th, it is imperative, and it's been this way last 15, 20 years, whatever it's been, that American flags are up and POW flags are up. It's just a thing. And it makes sense. Memorial Day, it makes sense. To 4th of July, it makes sense. And when the pride flags were put up, they apparently took down too many of the other flags and put their pride flags in it. So the keeper of the flag goes to the first selectman, and the first selectman says, okay, I'll talk to Colin, and calls Colin up and says, and Colin, by the way, works for Parks and Rec and handles some of this stuff. And goes, you put too many up, takes them down. No problem whatsoever. Colin, no problem. Next morning goes and fixes it. Nobody thinks a thing of it until a person, I'm going to mention names here, but a person who is clearly gay and works as an activist in the gay community was with him and does a post on social media that basically says, I hope you got your pictures of your flags in because the town forced us to take them down. And it was just awful and it's terrible. And it's, we had 12 up and now they're taking them down. We can only have them on certain sides of the street. And the implication was because they were pride flags, these had to come down. Posts like this are made to get people mad. They're made to get people riled up. Nobody who understood the facts liked the post or commented on the post. But elected officials did. A member of our Board of Education posted, said this is pathetic. Other people who are people in town posted in response to this, in support of this supposed anti-gay imperative to remove some pride flags. Now, to anybody with a brain, you could take 2 seconds, drive down to the center of town, and you will see not just pride flags, very, very large pride flags. You have seen Town Hall lit up in pride colors. You have seen the Blackstone Library lit up in pride colors. You could still see a pride flag at Town Hall today. There is no question this had nothing to do with being pride flags. They could have been Pokemon flags for that matter. Because they removed other flags, they had to be put back in place. There's still plenty of pride flags there. But the accusation against the town that it's homophobic, that it won't support pride, or they were forced to take it down because of pride, is a disgusting allegation. It's a horrible allegation, especially when you have people who have supported it for the last 5 or 6 years. Jamie Cosgrove supported it. I think the RTM has. There's been proclamations signed and passed, but almost unanimously, as far as I know, on the RTM. This has overwhelmingly been supported in our town. And then an activist wants to paint our town as anti-gay, homophobic. And all the comments that came after said things, Brantford's homophobic anyway. This is what we do. This is disgusting in our town. I have a simple question. Jamie Cosgrove is as non-political as it gets. We all know that. He's a registered Republican. Would the same thing have happened if he was a registered Democrat? Exact same set of circumstances. Would the same activist post the same thing accusing the town of being anti-gay if the first selectman was a registered Democrat? My gut tells me no, that would not have been the case. Now, when we have activists involved and we take a message that is wrong, misleading, and they use social media, awful things can happen. You have people now posting that Brantford is a homophobic town or an anti gay town, which is ridiculous, nonsensical, easily disproven. But people quickly run to it, and other elected officials go on there who happen to be Democrats, maybe politically that helps them, saying, oh my God, this is pathetic. I can't believe this. I'll reach out to the first one. And it's a danger that we all have because right now, no matter what the issue is, abortion, gay rights, and any major issue that's happening, on our Facebook feeds are people that we overwhelmingly agree with. And so we can post things that are sometimes not true or respond to things that are sometimes not true because we have a natural inclination to agree further with people we already agree with. And dangerous things can happen. We'd like to bring people together. We'd like Pride to be about bringing people of any sexual orientation together. Be proud of who you are. That's a great message. When we start dividing people based on nonsense and false information and implying somebody is racist or anti-gay or homophobic to push our own agenda, to get more likes, and groupthink starts to sit in, we have a dangerous situation. And I think it's a lesson for all of us. Go to your Facebook feed now. Go to your Instagram feed now. And if you follow people who are political, do you follow also reasonable people on the other end of the spectrum? People who think differently than you do. Still intelligent. I'm talking about the crazy, not the far left or the far right. We're not talking about that stuff. But logical people who can challenge what you believe, who can call out false posts, call out misleading posts. In this case, I did say this isn't true. The stuff you're posting is not right. And instead of saying, like a logical person was, you know what, I may have overreacted. It's not true. Let me take it down. They fought and they attack and they call you names. That person has no intention of doing good for the town, no intention of being accurate. They have an agenda. But the information we take in on our social media feeds is generally from people we already agree with. And it's interesting as we look at the abortion issue, as decided, is a legal one, right? That's what it is. It is, we've had this debate since the beginning of our country, states' rights versus federal rights. The decision was made. Was it political? Of course it was political. We have a conservative Supreme Court. In this case, there's horrible ramifications for many women, also some men, but it was a political decision. It wasn't a bunch of Supreme Court saying, let's screw over women. It was basically saying, we don't believe the federal government has a right to make this decision. It opens the door for a lot of other things about interpretations of the statute. But right now in Connecticut, because we generally lean left, most of my friends lean left, I have conservative as well, we have that groupthink. This is awful. This is terrible. This is awful. I can't believe this. In other states, it's, oh my God, this is amazing. Can't believe it finally happened. Been fighting this forever. Because we tend to have people that already agree with us on our feeds. And that is the worst thing for logic. That is the worst thing for honest debate. To only be involved with, to only interact with, to only agree with people who already think like we do. And it's becoming a bigger problem. I posted quite a long time ago that the start of the fall of our society will be Mark Zuckerberg, will be Facebook. Because we get to pick and choose, not from logical sources, not from intelligent people on both sides. We're picking and choosing from things of people we already agree with, organizations we already agree with, people who have agendas. And we just reinforce what we already think instead of thinking critically about different things. So that happened in Brantford, and it was just not like it wasn't a massive thing. It didn't change anything, but it became a big thing on social media, and I got calls on it because people were saying, what happened? Why would Jamie be anti-gay? Why would he take down pride flags? Stop. Go to the center of town. Pride flags are all over town. And by the way, they're huge. There actually is an issue that might have to be talked about at some point about making a standard size for flags when you have some that are huge, just massive. may be too much. Maybe from a town standpoint, all the flags that are put up throughout the year should be the same overall size. But that being said, it is what it is. I have to say, did I mess up and put the wrong? Yeah, I have the wrong date on this. Okay. I'll have to change that after the fact. Sorry about that. Okay. That being said, I want to talk a little bit about just perspective. I haven't been on it forever. And so the abortion thing kind of dominated the last 4 or 5 days in conversation. Those where I've talked to, social media discussions, what have you. But we also have, I'm going to put this poll up. Let's talk about this. It's from NPR. And this poll is the U.S. Supreme Court has overturned the 1973 decision in Roe versus Wade, which guaranteed the right to an abortion. Do you support or oppose the Supreme Court's decision to overturn it? Now, there's a few reasons I'm putting this up because I found it pretty fascinating. My supposition, my belief, was that it was probably in the 75-25% of the people supported abortion rights. I'm kind of shocked to see the overall 40% supported the ruling, only 56% are against the ruling, and 4% had no opinion. I don't know who those 4% are. I wonder what their IQ is. Like at this point, it seems a little crazy to not have a stance on that, but only 56% oppose the ruling. This country is far more divided on abortion than you think. It seems obvious when we hear the rhetoric we hear, especially in Connecticut, right? It's women's rights, it should be health care, what have you. We're hearing it from every elected Democrat in the world. By the way, this election coming up for a state legislature, for Congress, whatever it is totally going to be Democrat social issues, Republicans economic issues, and that's going to be a fascinating political war to see play out. Abortion rights versus the price of gas. Inflation versus gay marriage or gay or whatever it is. Social issues on ones. All you're going to hear from Democrats are social issues. They're not going to talk anything about taxes. And all you're going to hear from Republicans is economics, taxes, gas tax. It's going to be a spectacular election season. That's going to be the overall discussion. But only 56% in an NPR poll. So it's an NPR poll. It skews left, as NPR does. Only 56% oppose it. I expected that number to be higher. Go to political affiliation, Democrats. 10% of Democrats supported it. 10% of Democrats. If you're expecting 100%, no. There are southern groups of Democrats who are anti-abortion Democrats. Political party, we get locked into whatever political party says is not always the case. Republicans, 20% of Republicans opposed the ruling. So when you're yelling about Republicans, if I hate this, now 20% of them oppose this ruling from the Supreme Court. Independents, only 53%. This issue is a lot closer nationally than we think because we're often in the Connecticut bubble. Our media is left. Our social media feeds are generally left people. We're dominated by elected officials who are Democrats. But it skews the fact that nationally, only 56% of people opposed it. 40% of people were happy with that ruling. In independents, 41% were happy with that ruling. Men, 43% agreed with it. 54% disagree with the ruling. Women, only 59% of women disagreed, opposed the ruling that overturned Roe v. Wade. Only 59% in an NPR poll, in a left-skewing poll. If we're caught in the Connecticut bubble, we're not getting a sense for the way the rest of the country is thinking. Once we get off the eastern seaboard and the West Coast, we are losing a sense for how the South, the Southeast, the rest of the country is thinking. There are many, many people who are very happy with this ruling. The real big difference is on college graduation. If you were not a college graduate, it's 50-50, 47% to 47%. College graduates overwhelmingly opposed it. It's a fascinating study that we're debating this now. But when you look at this polling, it kind of changes the way you're thinking. You have to understand there are many people in this country who had no problem with this ruling. And the numbers, only 59% of women opposed it. Only 59% of women in an NPR poll opposed that decision. But let's put this in a little bit of context now. Yes, it's awful for some women. I disagree with the decision. I understand the legal decision that was made. From a legal standpoint, I completely understand it. There's a legal standpoint, and then there's the reality standpoint. And the reality standpoint is there are many, many women, especially women of low income, who are now in trouble. And we hear from sometimes, oh, they shouldn't have less sex, be more on top of your game. Don't be, listen, it's all nonsense. That's not reality. So let's hope that every Republican state especially starts saying, hold on, we're going to put out contraception like crazy. That's not going to happen, but it would be nice. How do I get rid of this overlay? That's how I do it. Educated people opposed? No way. It's just wrong. I'm actually offended. I don't know who Justin Thomas is, but I don't know what was wrong. That being the case, look at what happened in the Ukraine today. I'm going to read this. Unimaginable death toll feared after Russia hits crowded Ukraine shopping mall. Ukrainian president said more than 1,000 civilians were inside at the time of the attack. So while we're debating the legalities of abortion, and we get to have discussions like this podcast right now, about life and legal issues and rights, 1,000 people in the Ukraine were in a shopping mall, going about their lives, opening stores, engaged in commerce, while being attacked by Russia with bombs overhead, with missiles. And it's spectacular as I'm reading this article, thinking we're discussing these things, and they're important things. But there are people on this planet right now who are going about their daily lives with missiles being aimed at them. At any minute, they can be killed. Over 1,000 people in a shopping mall. Now, if we said, hey, there's Russian tankers off the Connecticut coast, and they could send those to Connecticut at any moment and kill us, how many of us would be like, yeah, we'll go to the mall? But these people had to. They've been under attack now for a few months. They're going about commerce with this threat over them that we don't have in America. And so we have July 4th weekend coming up. And as much as we can hate an abortion ruling, as much as we can hate so many different things that are happening, Democrat versus Republican, the rhetoric that's taking place, we get to live in a place where there's no threat of a missile coming at us. There's no threat of the mall we go into being bombed. There's no threat of losing our lives in that manner in a war by walking out the door. It's a freedom that we have, that we get to have this conversation about pride flags. We get to have this conversation about abortion. And people are impacted. It impacts life. But it's a spectacular thing that we live in a country with the amount of freedom that we have and the amount of security that we have. It's an amazing thing of perspective. As I was reading this, it's just, and look it up. I read it on NBC Connecticut. Unimaginable death toll. Scores of civilians are feared killed or wounded in a Russian missile attack Monday on a crowded shopping mall in Ukraine's central city of whatever it is. I can't pronounce it. Citing more than 1,000 civilians were inside at the time of the attack. Images from the scene showed giant plumes of black smoke from the shopping center engulfed in flames as emergency crews rushed in and onlookers watched in distress. That's spectacular. That on one side of the globe, we can be having good conversations about issues, serious issues. From the other side of the globe, they're going about their lives while under the threat of being bombed in a shopping mall. Just from a perspective standpoint, it kind of shook me reading that earlier. It's an amazing contradiction that we have and an amazing freedom as Americans that we have. And if you get a chance to read those articles, read them. It's really spectacular. I'll post a link to the NPR poll later if people are interested. Justin, what does America do when genocide occurs? We talked about this. One of my last podcasts was about the debate, the ethical debate that America's in, right? So if they get involved directly, now certainly we're indirectly involved. If they get involved directly, you run the risk of what may be a madman in Putin on the other side starting a nuclear war. So basically, America has taken the stance of we are willing to. Could we step in and save Ukraine? Yeah, absolutely. Can the rest of the world step in and save? Yes, they can. But you're now against Putin, who has nuclear weapons, a nuclear arsenal. And so we have basically taken the stance of we're willing to let Ukraine go to a certain extent. Russia only seems to be after certain areas of Ukraine, strategic areas, to avoid a nuclear war. And that's a spectacular decision to have to make. Yes, we'll have that. The Middle East, a little bit different, far more economic at the time, economic concerns. And then we also have pacts with certain countries that are certain organizations where we have to get involved in some of these things. And so now you're seeing other countries that have a border with Russia rushing to get involved in NATO to get some sort of help if Russia decides to attack them. A lot of this Russian attack is thought to be to avoid Ukraine ever getting involved in NATO. But it's amazing that there are people in this world who have to fight with this and live every day, live their normal lives, go to a shopping mall with the threat of a missile coming in, while we get to go to dinner, talk with friends, debate Supreme Court rulings, talk about pride flags, have little podcasts like this. It's a spectacular freedom that we really cannot take for granted. It's an amazing privilege to live in the United States. And you know what I did to get to earn it? Nothing. Somebody slept with my mother and whatever happened, and I was born here, and it's the luckiest thing that's ever happened in my life, especially when you could have been born in the Ukraine, you could have been born in Syria, you could have been born in the Middle East, and many other countries that have nothing close to the freedom and security that we have here. Okay, that's my rant for today. Tomorrow, we'll try to focus on more local issues. We'll talk about the local elections coming up, the impact of the national discussion on those local elections, who those candidates are. We now have candidates locked in from the political parties in all of our major races. I don't believe there's significant opposition to replace Sean Scanlon, but the other ones, there are some very interesting races to talk about. Public schools get shut up on a daily basis. Freedom, security. Yes, bad things happen. But to go about your life with the risk of a missile coming into a mall, while we get to talk about these things, is an amazing comparison. And it's a reminder of where we are and the freedom that we have here. And the freedom that people like me have to get on a podcast and have a conversation with you. So I'm thankful for that. That said, I hope everyone has a great night. We'll be back tomorrow at 4 o'clock. I'm, again, not sure if I'll be live or it's recorded earlier, but we'll make sure we get something up here every day at 4 o'clock. Thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for your comments. Have a great